Hello, Pearl. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's very interesting. I mean, I kind of just woke up, and you're getting ready to go to bed.
That is very true.
Yeah, it's uh, for anybody listening. We had tried to find a benefit, a mutually beneficial time, because we are 12 hours apart, I think.
We are
Yeah.
indeed.
Um, And so originally we were scheduled to try to meet up at 11, which 11 a.m. for me is 11 p.m. for you. And so
Exactly.
yeah, that was that was a little bit late for you. So we tried to bump it up a little bit and make it a little bit easier on
Yes.
on you. And I appreciate you coming on to talk to me so late in your day. I'm sure that it's been a
Well,
long day already.
it's a pleasure to be on, Stephen. And actually, thank you for accommodating to my schedule as well, for trying to push it up so it's not too late into my day.
Yes, of course. I'm happy to do so. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and
Mhm.
how you got into the composition field?
Oh, well, for becoming the composer that I am today, it wasn't very straightforward or smooth, in fact. But it started when I was pretty young. But should I maybe describe where I came from and all that stuff too, or would you?
Yeah, of course, if you would like
Okay.
to disclose any of that.
Well, you see, actually, many people ask me this question of where I'm from because they see my biography say I'm from the UK, but as you can see, I'm Chinese. So I
Yeah.
originated from Hong Kong. That's where my family was. Although we moved to Singapore for my dad's work during that time, before actually deciding to move to England to settle down, and I was predominantly raised over there and spent most of my education there as well. But it was during the last few years that I came back to Singapore to do various things such as music and work as well. So in terms of how I got to become a composer, as I said, I was quite young, around 6 years old, and I suddenly developed this interest to learn the violin. And you have
Mm.
to know, my family and my relatives are no way musical or musically inclined. So I think they were pretty surprised that I had requested to learn an instrument by
Mm.
myself. Um, so nevertheless, they were very supportive of me, and they allowed me to try the violin out, and subsequently the piano as well. And I think from having instrumental lessons afterwards, it kind of gave me the techniques to start fiddling about, especially on the piano. And whenever I heard like a piece of music from films and dramas and or songs that I liked, especially when it really evoked me, like the emotions that it got to me. I just got really inspired to just write little melodies, um,
Mm.
and it kind of developed from there. My high school teachers were very encouraging when they discovered this hobby of mine, and so they asked me to write pieces for string orchestra and ensembles, and it really gave me this confidence to think and consider that, yeah, I can maybe become a composer. I mean, I didn't know what that entailed. Like, what kind of jobs does a composer actually do, and what
Right.
kind of paths or what kind of subjects do I have to take from here? But it seemed like a possible goal that I could reach.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, actually, when I reached university, things went a little downhill because the subjects that were offered there were modules like contemporary music, new music, and even early music. And I mean, they were really, really interesting subjects as well, but just not what I wanted to study. I think I just really
Right.
enjoyed writing music that sort of had a lot of emotion to it, and that really could musically express narration. Um, so I just felt a little limited during university of what I could write, and the only genre that sort of was relevant to what I felt I was comfortable writing in was musical theater, which is something I
Mm,
really like and enjoy as well. But I still had this goal. I thought maybe I could still continue to be the composer, and I picked up on doing a master's degree. And it's
mm,
not the film master's that I mentioned in my biography, but it's a master's that I don't talk very often about. And that's because I actually didn't complete this master's. I studied it
mm,
for a few months only and realized it really wasn't my thing. It
mm,
was very philosophical in their education, talking a lot of
mm,
abstract art. And for me, I just want to learn more about the relationship between music and emotion and storytelling. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know that would be related to film music, in fact. And I didn't even know there was such an industry out there. That
mm.
didn't come across to my mind. Um, so after quitting that master's, I just decided not to do music anymore. I quit
Okay.
writing music. I got a waitressing job at a hotel restaurant and thought, that's my life now. um, but then my mom suggested perhaps I could try going back to Singapore to see whether there was something that I would enjoy doing. So I took up that chance, and I'm thankful that I did because once I got to Singapore, I actually got a part-time violin teaching job, whilst
Mm,
I also studied a part-time film production course because
okay.
I was very curious about that industry. I didn't know that I could do music in the industry, but if I could do something related to it, I thought that would still be quite fun. And interestingly, one of the lecturers there, who's quite a well-known producer in Singapore, he introduced me to a few people who I ended up scoring some projects to, as well as a composer friend who also taught me how to use DAW software and library samples. And that just completely
Mm,
widened my eyes. I thought, wow, there's such technology to do this now.
yeah.
And it was a really life changing moment there. And I thought, you know what? Yes, I want to do film music. I want to score. So I found another master's course, a Pacific Northwest Film Scoring Program, which is in Seattle, and taught by my mentor, Hami Man. And it was an incredible experience learning that course. And so now I am working as a composer for film animation and games, and although yeah, as I said, it wasn't quite a straightforward journey. I'm pleased that I got to where I am now. So yes.
That's wonderful. That's a very turbulent journey to getting where you are now. I completely understand. I started off my career in music education. I thought that music
Oh. Mm-hmm.
education was the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was going through college, I was realizing I don't want to teach. I I'm not a teacher. So I went through so many things. I thought I wanted to be a conductor. I thought I wanted
Mm,
to change my degree to be in performance. Eventually, I did change my degree to be in trumpet performance. But at that time, when I got there, I realized,
mm.
okay, I'm changing to trumpet performance because it's going to be an easier transition to be a music historian from
I see.
education. And it
Mm,
was it was a lot of degree technicalities within
mm-hmm.
our university system, at least at my university when I went there. uh it was I was going to graduate on time if I switched my
Mm-hmm.
major.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't switch my major, I was going to stay there an extra year and a half just because.
Oh.
And that would have meant I was going to be in university for 5.5 years, and was already I was already like, I have
I'm
plans to
done.
go to
Yeah.
yeah, I have plans to go to to get a master's degree. I don't want to be in school for 7.5 years plus. I'm still deciding
Mm.
whether or not I want a PhD, but the more I think about it, the less I want that. um,
I feel
but
for you, Stephen. Yeah.
uh, I I totally understand the turbulence that is getting to where you are now. And
Mm.
even this podcast, when I graduated from my master's degree, the only thing that I thought was, I guess I'm going to have to return to the classroom if I want to be a music historian.
Oh, yeah.
And then this pandemic hit, and I was like, there's something else. There's something else that I can do. And that's how this was born. And I'm so glad that it is, because I'm doing something that feels much more fulfilling than the classroom. And
That's amazing. I'm happy
yes,
for you too, Stephen. Yeah.
thank you so much. So, what is being a media composer like, as opposed to being something for more of a concert stage?
Well, for me personally, I feel like for a media composer, you definitely have a lot of framework to work with, especially with visuals, and you want the music to match according to the visuals, or at least help to emphasize or highlight what's going on. Whereas
Hmm.
for a concert composer, I hope I don't offend the concert composers out there, but I do feel that they may have a lot more freedom in what they can write. Perhaps they may have some conditions, or they have some other instructions that they have to adhere to. But I feel that they can still write a little more in free form, rather than actually
Hmm.
having visuals there to keep you on track of how you want to write musically. Mm-hmm.
Mm. What have been some of your favorite projects that you've worked on?
Ooh. Oh, tough choice. Actually, I have enjoyed most of them so far.
Oh, good.
Um, yes, it's a good thing, definitely. Let
Yeah.
me have a think about it. Um, I think I really enjoyed one of the ones that I submitted to you, the music called Ellipsis.
Hmm.
As the music actually easily fell onto my lap as I was working on it then. And I have another project which I was working alongside Ellipsis called Priscordian, which was an animation project by a Sheridan College student. She's a very, very talented storyboard artist. And since I also have a love for animation too, it was really lovely to try and fulfill what she wanted on screen, whilst I could also have fun with my writing too.
That's wonderful. So we've talked about your connection into the film industry, but you also are a composer for video games and other forms of media. What is it like to compose for other forms of media as compared to film?
um, wow. I'll have to think about that too.
Oh, sure.
How should I put it? I guess for film, there is a storyline that you always have
Mm,
to make sure that the music fits alongside with. In comparison to games, which of course they also have their own storylines, but the music tracks that are written for it might not necessarily need to be in a particular sequence for it to make sense for a whole
mm,
storyline.
right,
Whereas in comparison, the film, it has to work in the right sequence for it to make sense.
right.
Then with other kinds of visuals as well, such as trailers and maybe documentaries, it really just depends on the format of the narration, I think, and what they need the music to particularly highlight or support. But I think the main difference of film and perhaps other things is that the music does have to work in a particular sequence alongside with the film. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. I
Mm,
remember talking to a few people who have been interested in film music, and
mm,
versus people who are interested in video game music. And the more I study both musics, the more I start to realize that there is absolutely a difference in how they are composed. As you
mm,
said, you have to compose a film score almost as if it fit within a sequence, and
Mm,
usually it does have to fit within a sequence. I think that depends on the filmmaker, and eventually it
yes.
does have to go into something.
Mm,
But when you are composing for video game music, the person who is playing the game has a completely different experience. That yes, you have moments where you have cutscenes, and
yes.
you have
Hmm.
those things are going to happen and they're going to be triggered, but you always have every person is always going to have a different experience playing a game, and even the same person
Mm,
can have a different experience when you're playing again or a second or even a third time.
yes.
um,
Hmm.
and that music has to line up in ways that fit within how the player is interacting with the world at that time. In your experience, how many tracks do you usually have to write for a video game score? uh have you had a huge amount of tracks to write for before, or has it been a little bit on a smaller scale?
For video games, so far I've only done smaller scale games. So
Hmm,
perhaps a couple of tracks, maybe four or five or so. But
okay.
I have been approached before for a bigger commercial games, and sometimes they request something like 24 tracks,
Wow.
or yes, up to that kind of scale, which I mean, I'd love to do. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get into that level so far. And I love to do that, although it is a big commitment, I have to say.
Hmm.
And sometimes they also don't um, uh, consider the amount of time that's needed to write such a large scale score. So it really depends on how the requirements that they have, as well as how much time and what exactly they need in
Mm,
terms of the scale of the game. Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm.
What have been some of your favorite film slash video game scores?
Mm. Oh, it's really hard for me to decide actually because I like many film scores, and I even like just watching films on their own. I know friends who tend to watch films and have already their ears are working, and they say, oh, okay, I can pick out this theme, and I know this particular harmony works so well. But for me, I just enjoy it as an audience, and I watch it and I think, oh yeah, the storyline's great, the visuals are wonderful, and then later on I think about hearing the music. But
Hmm.
if I really had to pick a film score, um, I think I'd have to go with one of my childhood favorites, which is Alan Menken's Disney scores, which
Oh,
would
wonderful.
either be I have three in mind, so maybe I can't pick one. I'm sorry, Stephen.
Oh, no, no, no. Please share.
I absolutely love Beauty and the Beast, The
Oh,
Little
yes.
Mermaid, and Aladdin. So those are probably my favorites scores if I were to listen them over and over again.
Wow.
And in terms of video game scores, truthfully, I have to confess, I sort of came in late in knowing about video game scores. It was only sort of during my master's that I became more aware of what kinds there were outside. And there's one that I really like, and we sort of studied it a little bit. I think it's called, is it The Shadow of the Colossus? I don't know whether I pronounced that correctly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that
Yes.
one there, which I was quite intrigued about. And we also had some Final Fantasy references. Yes,
Oh, good.
there were definitely some music there that definitely struck me. And I thought, wow, even video game scores can be so incredible and so colorful as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really incredible what's out there now.
Yeah. I actually last for November, I had my fiance on as a guest, where we talked about the music of Final Fantasy X,
Oh,
and
wonderful!
it was so interesting because I have never played a Final Fantasy game, and when he said, "Okay, I'm gonna do Final Fantasy X as my as my topic for the episode, uh, I said, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to go and listen to the music. And when I pulled up the album, and I just scrolled down, I was like, oh my gosh, this
Mm.
album doesn't end. and and when you get to the bottom of Spotify, that tell you how long the album is,
Mm, mm, mm,
and it was like 4.5 hours long, and I'm like, and and these and these little tracks are like a minute long, and it's like, oh my
mm.
gosh, there's and
It
it was
it can
so
be
funny.
pretty
And
overwhelming, right? Yeah.
yeah, uh it took me the whole week to listen to the album to prepare for the
Wow.
episode, because I
Mm,
was listening to it while I was in the car, or when I was walking, and I was getting little bits and pieces here and there.
mhm,
But yeah,
mhm.
I that those scores are beautiful, and I can absolutely see how they have been such a staple in the world of composing for video games.
Yes,
Um,
for
just
sure.
because,
Mhm.
like you said, how colorful they are, and at
Mm.
times how much they add to the narrative of those stories. And um, I think it really helped when they added on extra composers to help with certain aspects, giving certain colors to certain spots, and
Yes.
certain
Mhm.
aesthetics, and it really helps a lot. As opposed to having just one person composing those video game scores. And I'm sure that you can agree. I mean, on a smaller scale, it's much easier to compose uh, a video game of much smaller size. But
Yes.
when you're getting up into like 100 tracks, that's gonna you're gonna need some assistance there.
Yes, definitely. I would definitely love assistance if I were to do something that big scale as well.
Yeah. um, what other forms of media have you composed for besides film and video games?
I have written for animation, which is another favorite of
Mhm.
mine to write for. And I recently wrote a trailer for a promotion of a book, so a book trailer, in fact.
Oh wow.
So that's something that I've started venturing in, and I actually hope to do various other things too, not limiting to film animation or games. But those are what I specialize in since I studied those in my master's course. Mhm.
What are some of those things that you hope to be able to compose for?
Um, well, actually, I kind of like to try something like documentaries.
Okay.
Um, they they may not require as much music, but I'm not sure whether you've watched BBC Blue Planet or those kind of shows. I feel that the
Mhm.
music over there is still so captivating, even though you're just watching the animals move about and
Yeah.
letting them do their thing. And I think music can play such a cool role in helping the audience really connect with it.
Mhm.
Anything else I like to do? Um, Film trailers are also something I'd like to try. Yeah,
Okay.
I've been doing many films, but not film trailers, which is a little surprising.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for dropping by to watch this video. If you want to continue this episode, head over to your favorite podcast platform right now and subscribe to the show. You can also finish watching this episode on the Composer Chronicles' Patreon page when you sign up at the $5 Rebellion tier or the $10 Wagnerian tier. All Patreon members also get early access to ad-free versions of the podcast, so head on over there for some great bonus content while supporting the Composer Chronicles. You can find the links to the podcast and the Patreon in the description below. Be sure to subscribe to the Alexandria Media YouTube channel for more videos like this one, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can find all information about this episode below in the description, and give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed watching. I look forward to seeing you over at the podcast or on the Patreon to finish up this episode.